Okay. Well, hello and welcome everyone. My name is Stephanie Raymond. I'm Orca Network's co-director of programs, and it's my pleasure to be the MC for tonight's event. And I'd like to start by thanking everyone for being here this evening. October is Orca Salmon Month, when we focus on the connections between healthy salmon populations and restoring the southern resident orca population. So I'm just curious, was anyone here able to participate in an Orca Recovery Day event last Saturday? You can use your reaction button to send a thumbs up or other emoji to show us if you did that. Anybody? Yeah? Great. Wonderful. Thank you for all you're doing to help the Southern residents. And just out of curiosity too, how about hit the reaction button if this is your first time attending an Orca Network event? Oh, look at that. Welcome. Welcome to the pod.
Wow.
That's amazing. All right. Well, I also want to thank each of you who made a donation when you registered for the event. Orca Network is a 501c3 nonprofit, and your donations support our work doing programs like tonight's webinar, our Welcome the Whales event that's coming up in January, and other educational events throughout the year, as well as the Whale Sighting Network that provides real-time sightings of whales in the Salish Sea, so you can hopefully get out to a beach to see them. Another question, how many of you follow the Sightings Network on Facebook? Yeah, you got a lot of whale spotters out there. That's great. That's fantastic. So if you're able to, I hope you will consider making a donation tonight, or maybe going to bid on our online auction items. You'll see the QR code there on our opening slide, and I'm just going to post in the chat the link to the auction as well. That runs through October 29th. And thank you for your support. So last year, for Orca Salmon Month, we asked what else, after all the work that's being done, do we need to do to start growing the southern resident population and toward recovery? And I can't tell you how happy I am to say that as we gather here tonight, there has in fact been a tiny bit of population growth for the southern residents, despite the devastating losses that we've seen over the year. The official Center for Whale Research census shows the population is 74 whales this year when it was 73 last year. And I can think of few things more hopeful during this incredibly challenging time that we live in. This year, we chose the theme of Southern resident storytelling. Some of our staff were talking about how few people still know the Southern residents as individuals. And that's really a combination of the whales' behavior changes. They're not visiting the west side of San Juan Island as frequently as they used to. And then the necessary distance requirements for boats to stay away from them, so they have the space that they need to forage. Those things mean that people have fewer opportunities to observe these whales closely and regularly. So those of us who've been fortunate enough to have these special encounters worry that out of sight means out of mind. And the southern residents need our focus and attention to be sure that we have healthy salmon runs, clean water, and good policy to help this population recover to a healthy level. So tonight, we're going to share a few stories here for the next 15 minutes or so. And then we're going to head into breakout rooms so that you'll have a chance to share your stories with each other in smaller groups. Each one of those smaller groups will be facilitated by one of our storytellers. And we'll spend about 15 minutes in breakout rooms. But don't worry if you don't get a chance to share your story there. At the end of our time together, I'm going to be sharing a link to an online circle forum where you can share your story and read others' stories about the Southern residents. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our storytellers for the evening, starting with Howard Garrett, who is Orca Network's co-founder and board president. Also in the room tonight is Susan Berta, who is Orca Network's co-founder and current executive director. Cindy Hansen, Orca Network's education and advocacy coordinator. Rachel Haight, Orca Network's sighting network co-coordinator. Nicole D'Amato, Orca Network's whale sighting network assistant. Bonnie Gretz, a longtime Orca Network volunteer, and probably maybe Bonnie has more stories than any of us here tonight. I don't know. And did Dr. Giles make it here as well?
I have not seen Giles yet.
Okay.
But hopefully she will be able to make it. She's probably been delayed.
Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead then, and Bonnie, if you would like to begin by sharing your story.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to read to you guys from my journal. I've kept a journal from the very first time I saw wild orcas in 1994 at the Center for Whale Research. So I have put down every single encounter with whales I've ever had. So on this particular day, it was June 21st of 2008, and I had come up from Oregon for Orca Sing at Limekiln. But in the daytime, we went out on Western Prince, and we knew when we went out that all three pods were around. So we decided to head south to Cattle Point, where J-Pod was heading north from Rosario. And so hoping for a meeting with some L's and K's who were further north and with more boats. So we met up with a few of J-Pod, weren't sure who they were at that point, and we could see the rest further south. And suddenly they turned back south and booked it down there. We followed and wondered, was there going to be a greeting ceremony? And they met up with a large group of Jays, including my boy Faith, L57, Ruffles, Granny, and some splashing and fooling around. And then, whoa, spy hops, breaching, rolling, belly up, sex, and all. First, they formed up and rolled by us, at least 25 and more. Perfect flat water. It was just incredible. Close enough for photos, but there were new regulations in place there right at that point. So if they started coming towards the boat, we had to back off. But they all stayed together. They were heading north, really hugging the shore. Saw some enormous cartwheels, more breaching, lots more hanky-panky. And so we weren't sure that they were all there, but it was all of J-Pod, some L's and some K's. So sort of a super pod. And so K-Pod did have a new baby that year, and the hydrophone was in, and we heard them chattering together, some interesting trills, whistles, grunts, etc. There was L74, 73, 78, and so many more. So we finally had to leave, and then Orca Sing was that night at Limekiln, and there were a few whales a little far out, and so that was cool. And the Orca Sing started, and we had, there was, and I don't know if he's still with us, an elderly gentleman in the choir that had this incredible voice. And first he led us in the peace song, and people with binoculars said the whales are heading north toward us. We had beautiful sunshine, flat, calm water, the Olympic Mountains shining in the distance. Then he led us in the Hallelujah chorus, and the whales headed toward us, and we sang them in. Ruffles leading the pack, pretty close, plus farther out breaches, spy hops. Were they looking at us? They call us the Ooh and Click Clan. They kept coming and coming and coming, all the J's, many L's and K's. I was sitting on the rocks, my head full of joy and love and peace and community with the whales and the people there. Over 100 people were there. Pretty close to tears at that point. And as they streamed by Limekiln, I moved over to the north side of the lighthouse to get better photos. And one female came pretty close in the kelp, and she nodded her dorsal fin at us. So she kind of tipped her dorsal fin towards us. And then another male rolled by over belly up, pecs up, tailed up, curled up, and so much more spy hops. They moved slowly north, and with their blows lit by the late afternoon sunshine of the solstice, the water sparkling, and all those loud whoosh, of exhalation, and the oohs and ahs and huge smiles of the human tribe. Um, let's see, everyone was hugging and sharing the wonder of the evening. And it was so great to share with so many friends. Hard to put into words the feeling of this evening. I think wonder, not in the sense of questioning, but awe and gratitude, love, peace, oneness with everything, the ocean, the sky, the sun, the whales, other people. It was amazing. And our dear friend Ugo called it an orca smorgasbord. And this is the picture that I have of some of that from 2008 summer solstice. So that's my story.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie.
Welcome.
I hope you can see all the love you're getting for that story. That was
But that's cool.
Oh, thank you so much. Nicole, why don't you take the next one?
Absolutely, I'm happy to. I don't know how I can follow that story up. For me, I feel like the story I wanted to tell is one of I'm someone who moved to the Puget Sound region in my adult life. In my 20s, I didn't grow up here. I've only been here since 2023. So for most of my life, I didn't know the Southern residents personally, but I loved them from afar. I lived on the East Coast and knew desperately that I wanted to meet them, but wasn't sure if I ever would, which maybe that resonates with some of you, depending on where you're calling in from right now. But for me, after I moved here in 2023, I knew that I had to try to connect with them, try to get to know them, not only as the community of whales that we love, but also as individuals. And for me, the first time that that really happened was just almost a year ago in November 2024. It was my first superpod, which I know in recent years, superpods have become less and less frequent. So I honestly didn't have
2024.
any. 2024, yes. So I wasn't sure if I'd ever have the experience to be able to see a super pod with my own eyes. But I'm fortunate that I did. So I was driving from Tacoma to Seattle on, I believe it was around November set, early November last year. And I was on my way to a class at the University of Washington. I'm a graduate student there. But I knew that the whales were around, and I was like, oh, let me try and see them. I went to a couple of viewpoints in my way between Tacoma and Seattle, but I kept missing them, just didn't get lucky enough. So I went to my class, and then after my class, I checked the whale sighting. Now I wasn't on shift that day, but I checked the Orca Network community group that we have on Facebook that many of you said that you follow. And I saw that the whales were in a true superpod, JK and L pod, and they were heading north and passing Seattle. So I knew I had to hurry over to the water. So I headed over to Lincoln Park, and one of my friends who is also from the East Coast, she came with me, and her father and her sister, who had never seen a whale before, also joined us. They happened to be visiting that day. Super lucky for them. So the first time that they ever saw whales was a super pod. And so we saw, there's a group of over 70 whales, and they weren't close to us. They were kind of on the other side of the channel, but the way that the sun was in the horizon, you could really see their blows. So there's just this line of absolute beautiful blows, one after the other after the other. And I remember my friend's father turned to me and he's like, you live here, like you experience these whales, like they're so special. This is so unique and so incredible. And that's when it really hit me. I was already in tears at this point. But it really hit me that, this is so special, and these whales are so special, and to get to know them and to be with them and to observe them, even if it's from far away, even if it's from shore and they're on the other side of the channel, it's still so special. And I feel so fortunate that I had that experience relatively soon after moving out here. So I'll stop there, but that's the story. Just the whole thing was priceless to see their reactions and really special for me.
Thanks, Nicole. I remember that day. I remember seeing the super pod go by because I live just close to Lincoln Park, and yeah, that was an amazing
Incredible.
day. We've been joined by a couple of very special guests, Dr. Giles from the Sea Doc Society, and of course the amazing Eva, the whale dog. If you don't know Eva's story, I don't know if Giles is planning to tell it, but we'll get to it at some point this evening. Giles, would you like to share your story?
Which story are we telling?
Whatever one you want.
Um, wow. What is my favorites? I mean, obviously the first time that I saw them, which was my 18th birthday, but I talk about that one a lot. So I'll skip that one. Uh, one of my favorite some of my favorite ones were early in my research career, getting to know the whales, getting to know the region. And L57, who was my favorite male whale. I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but L57 was and still is my favorite male whale ever. He was just such a gregarious, interesting animal. I always describe him as like the Clint Eastwood of the killer whale community because he had this really tall, lean dorsal fin and just a really big male. And he used to hang out with J1 a lot. And when he wasn't with J1, he was with the females because the girls liked J51. It was very interesting to see them group around him. And again, early in my research career, 2005, I was on the Soundwatch boat and we were going up through, this was a new thing where the Southern residents were going up Swanson Channel and out Active Pass. Prior to that, more often they had gone, if they were going to go up to the Fraser River, they went up through Boundary Pass. But 2005 really marked the year that they really started going up Swanson Channel a lot. And there's this one part near on North Pender Island called Bettis Rocks. And we got to calling it L57's Love Shack because he would go back there with J-Pod females and just like disappear for a while. And we'd have to wait him out and then kind of pick him up on the other side. And I loved hearing many years later, I loved hearing stories from Astrid Van Ginneken talking about L57 as well, which I didn't know about at the time. But if you ever have an opportunity to Google Astrid Van Ginneken L57 stories or something, they're really amazing and hilarious. Well, later in life, I learned that L57 was actually the father of the offspring of my favorite female killer whale. So L57 is the dad to J20's first living offspring. And so that just made it that much more cool that again, I picked these whales. I could pick Spock just because she's amazing. She's got a beautiful saddle patch and she's just a big, bold female. And then come to find out that they actually parented an offspring was really cool. I've got tons of other stories, but I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Giles. And thanks for being here tonight.
Sorry to be late.
No worries. Rachel, would you like to share a story with us?
Yes, it's hard to pick. There's so many. Might do a couple little over this visit, most recent in September when J-Pod came to visit Puget Sound. It was a little bit of a historic event in its own right for several different reasons. They went by Point Robinson early in the season under sunny skies and warm weather, something that just doesn't really happen that often. And there's a lot of excitement around that. And then the next day on September 18th, it was a surprise when J-Pod turned up in Saratoga Passage. So I headed out and based on Whidbey, got down there and we found the pod making their way north through the passage. They were spread out a little bit, but everybody seemed to be there. And shortly after that, when the whales were up by Camano Island State Park, there was a report of a small group of orcas down off of Sandy Point, about 8 miles to the south. So that was kind of interesting and wanted to know who that was. And J-Pod at that point flipped back south and they made it to about Saratoga Woods. At the same time, the small group of orcas was coming from the south. J-Pod then again flipped north and disappeared out of sight. And the small group happened to come beneath the bluff beneath us. And there was interesting behavior. It was definitely something I've not seen before. You could see there was a lot of splashing and tight circling, and we figured out it was the J16s, at least three of them. It was J26 Mike and J16 Slick and J42 Echo. And at first we weren't sure what was going on, and it was a surprise to see, oh my goodness, there is a tiny little calf tucked in that group. And at several different points, you could see Mike pushing the baby up and kind of just guiding along and nudging. And it was just really, it felt like the calf, I was one of the first to see the new calf. And it felt like an intimate look into their lives to see this moment of this young calf's little life. Um, J36 Alki, she was not with them. She is part of the J16. She was with the main group at J-Pod and eventually came porpoising north. And what makes the whole thing special is there's so much heartbreak in this population, but also joy. So while J42 Echo had her baby there just 6 days prior, J36 Alki, her sister, was discovered carrying a deceased neonate. So when those two orcas should have had their babies together, their cousins, unfortunately, one was lost and one was not. But despite that kind of sadness, as the whales continued their visit through Puget Sound, there was so much breaching, so much joy, so much surface activity. You can just feel the excitement from them. And it's just always a good reminder of to live in the moment and just that joy. And even though they go through so much heartbreak, they can still find all of that goodness. So after that, the J16s for the rest of their visit in Puget Sound did remain split off from the rest of J-Pod, perhaps just to spend time with that little one because every moment is so precious. And the rest of J-Pod decided to go, let's make history. So down they went. And as they made their way towards Point Defiance, they did the unthinkable and headed south down the Tacoma Narrows. And they haven't done that since probably the captures era over 5 decades ago. So it was just one of those moments that they, go back to these places where bad things can happen. And there's so much excitement. The humans on shore everywhere are just so excited to see these whales do things they've never done. And they spent the night in Carr Inlet. So I made my way down to the Tacoma Narrows. And that was the first time I've stood on the bridge to see whales come under the bridge. And it was as they approached the bridge, they got tighter and tighter together. And so when they came under the bridge, they were in a really tight family group. So I just wanted to real quick to show this clip as it is probably one of my favorite moments of any whales I've seen, just this perspective. So I'm going to try to share my screen here real quick. All right. All right. And if everybody can see that, I'm just going to show this clip. So I made sure to line myself up. I wanted to be right above where they were when they came under. So it was just one of the coolest perspectives to see. I love bridge passes. It gives you a perspective that you just can't get from anywhere else. And just seeing them in this kind of manner beneath my feet all together like that is just a moment you never forget. So just it was really cool. But as they approached the bridge, they were spread out with lots of breaching. But then as they got there, they grouped up as a tight family and went under together. So just something really, really cool. And that whole visit was truly special. And so with them, I've learned over the years that given their fragile nature, you just have to spend and enjoy every moment with them that you can. And it's just something that you can feel the excitement that comes with their visits is just unmatched. So they're just really special, special whales.
Thanks, Rachel. Wow.
Great stories.
Yeah. Howard?
Yeah, sure. My story goes back a bit to 1995 when I was working with the Center for Whale Research, and we were out on an encounter on the west side of San Juan Island, which happened a lot in those days with J-Pod, somewhere, south of Lime Kiln. And we kind of followed with J-Pod heading north and got to Open Bay, which is sort of the opening to Snug Harbor where we were tied up, and it was the end of the encounter. I guess we'd taken enough pictures of whales, and so we were just sitting there, kind of blissed out from a beautiful day with J-Pod, watching them disappear off to the west around Henry Island, and just just still in the water. And then suddenly we saw one coming back, and with a little blow right beside that one. And they came back. It had to be half mile to a mile as their family, as the rest of J-Pod continued north. They came straight to where we were just still in the water and came within 15 feet of the stern of the boat and made a circle around the stern of the boat and then continued back north. And that was J14 with her new baby, J30. And it's just a short little anecdote, but it was really meaningful to me because it showed me that they knew that we were there. And that was a case of she was introducing us to her baby or her baby to us, or in one way or another, there was some kind of a connection that she was making between her baby and us. And that opened up a whole new realm to me of how the orcas can be so aware of us and be willing to relate, to communicate, to do something to give an indication that, you know, they acknowledge our presence, and that was just really nice to see. So, you know, it's a short little anecdote, but it meant a lot to me, and I remembered it these past 30 years. So I guess it must have been pretty important at the time.
Thanks, Howie. Susan, did you have a story?
Sure. Well, I have many stories. I think let's see. My favorite is, well, I think my favorite is still the one when the at time Secretary of State Ralph Monroe was doing a press conference at Lime Kiln Whale Watch Park that he and his then wife Karen had designated as Whale Watch Park. And it was just when the southern resident population was really taking a dip. And J6 had just passed away. And J6 was named Ralph in honor of Ralph Monroe. And Ralph wanted to do a big press conference to raise awareness. And he was doing it in honor of J6 Ralph's passing. So I had gone up to San Juan Island, and no orcas had been seen. J-Pod wasn't around that day. And as we were just walking up to Lime Kiln, we heard that J-Pod was around and starting to head that way. And we're walking up there, and yep, here comes J-Pod. So right exactly at 1 o'clock, just as Ralph is, he's there, the press is there, and he's standing at, getting ready to talk. And exactly at 1 o'clock when he starts talking, J-Pod shows up. And so that was pretty cool. It's like, how do they know? And there are many stories of orcas showing up for special occasions like this, but that wasn't enough in this case. So he started talking about when he and Karen were out sailing and met J6 and why this whale was special. And as he's describing this moment, one orca starts breaching. And he's talking, and this orca breaches, and everybody's like, oh, and so he turns around, and Ralph's heart was a hard man to interrupt. He was a very good speaker, a very gregarious, And of course, his back was turned to the water, so he kept missing all these amazing breaches. So this orca breached once, and then Ralph would start again, and the orca would breach again, and he would miss it and turn around. So this happened coincidentally 6 times while he talked about J6. And then we find out the orca that was doing the breaching was J8, J6's sister. And these are things that, you know, that make the biologists like Ken, who really was very narrow, you know, I'm a scientist, I'm not into this woo-woo stuff at all. Um, it it changes their mind about orcas, and you know, there is science, but there's something else with orcas and how they know things that that we can't explain, and all those extra the size of their brains and the parts of their brains that we don't understand because we don't have them, and things that happened when Toki died, that happened with the southern residents here, that are more than just coincidences or synchronicities, um, and make me realize, I think that's something that draws us to the whales, is that mystery, the part that we can't explain, that is, I don't know if spiritual is the word, but there's something there, there's some connection that we can't even put a name to. But there is this connection between us, that we as humans don't even know how to name. And that that was one of the um, most, it was also humorous because I've never seen anybody stop Ralph talking so many times in one speech, as that. But it was just a good example of and of that connection. And Ralph and Karen had done so much. I mean, they stopped the captures, and I truly believe J8 was thanking him, and they were there for J6's, you know, and Ralph was there to raise awareness of what was happening with the southern residents. And you know, there's those who don't believe that and those that do, but anyway, that's one of my favorite stories.
See a question in the chat from Denise. What happened when Toki died? Who wants to take that?
Shall I tell it?
I'll let Howard.
Yeah, go ahead, Howard.
Or someone else. Yeah.
Well, it was both the day before and the day of that Toki died. The day before, I wasn't there, but the lime kiln webcam picked up for about 2.5 to 3 hours southern residents, and I haven't gotten IDs on which ones they were, but 20 to 25 or so of them between 3 o'clock and about 6 o'clock were right under the webcam, or within, I don't know, a quarter mile or a little more, but the operator was very good at panning around and finding them and zooming in. So very good video coverage of them behaving in a way that I had not seen. And I still have never seen anything quite like it, because they weren't foraging. They weren't just traveling. I mean, and they were staying in that one spot, which is itself virtually unheard of. And they came in from the ocean. You know, they hadn't just been there, hadn't been there for weeks or months. But this was August 17, 2023, the day before Toki died. And they, you know, I can't describe it without interpreting it, without giving it, you know, imposing a meaning on it. And I don't know really what it was, but it looked like they were kind of in agony. like they were writhing, like they were uh, directionless, kind of r- rolling, moving. The funny thing was they kind of were all in the same pace, the same speed, very slow motion, kind of a spy hop here, a rollover here, uh, go down, come up, I mean, just, but kind of fairly tightly packed most of that time. And I remember, watching it live, having no idea that Toki in Miami was in her last hours. But wondering what is going on. Why are they doing that strange behavior? It doesn't fit any of the checklist behaviors, spy hop, tail lob, everything that you're supposed to look for. It was just really, really strange. And then the next day, they were still out there, but not right under Lime Kiln. They were more spread out down around Land Bank and further south along San Juan Island, um, and foraging and acting much more normal. But L25, Ocean Sun, separated from the rest. And well, I would have to defer to Rosie Caillou, who gave us an interpretation of that, which was that when there is a service for a departed family member, that the elders tend to go off while the young ones socialize. And so it was familiar to her. Um, I can't explain it otherwise, but uh, there was, it seemed, I mean, all I could say, and I compared notes with other people that witnessed it, and all we can say for sure is it sure looked like they knew what was happening in Miami. How that can be is beyond our scientific understanding at this point, but somehow they looked like they knew what was going on, that Toki was dying in Miami.
So that's another
That's that
amazing,
story.
amazing story.
Yeah.
We're going to have one more story from Cindy before we go into breakout rooms.
All right, I'm actually going to share my screen so I can show you a couple pictures as I tell my story. And it's a pretty short one, but okay, hopefully everybody can see that okay. So my story is about J38 Cookie, who most people know as one of the big, impressive, perfect boys in J-Pod. But my story actually takes place 22 years ago when he was just a calf. And I actually fell in love with him the moment I knew he existed, before I ever met him, because I already had a really strong attachment to his entire family. I was working as a naturalist in 2003, the year he was born, and I'd seen him a couple times kind of off in the distance with his mom, but I was really looking forward to just kind of this, monumental introduction to this little whale that I was already in love with. So on Mother's Day of that year, I was working on the boat and we found J-Pod. They were fairly close to shore on the west side of San Juan Island. Everybody was resting. The boats were kind of lined up offshore. It was a nice, beautiful, calm day, so everybody had their engines off. And we were all just watching from a distance. Everybody was super happy to see them and to be able to see Cookie with his mom. Plus, there was another baby in J-Pod, J39 Mako. And so it was just a really beautiful, beautiful day and sighting. But then suddenly it was like somebody flipped on a switch and they all woke up and they started porpoising and racing out to Salmon Bank. And most of them went well in front of where the boats were, but we were the last boat in line. So we were still kind of watching from a distance. And suddenly we noticed that Oreo, J22, who's Cookie's mom, and her little family, so that would have been her older son, J34 Double Stuff, and her niece, J32 Rhapsody, and of course, baby Cookie. And they were coming up behind us. And back in those days, when the boats were kind of surprised by whales like that, it wasn't really encouraged to start up your engines and move. It was actually thought to be a better practice to just kind of stay where you were and keep your engines off and just let the whales go by. So that's exactly what we did. They ended up coming right up to our stern, and Cookie wasn't even swimming. He was just like breaching the entire way, just completely goofing off the entire time. And Oreo and Cookie came up right beside the boat. Oreo kind of was gliding by on her side. She turned on her side. She looked up at us. I swear we made eye contact. And I lifted up my camera to take a picture, and Cookie chose that exact moment to jump straight up out of the water. So I did not get my picture of Oreo's eye, but I did get the best photobomb ever of little baby Cookie. So
Oh,
it's been such a joy watching him grow up over the years. Over the last 22 years, he's just become this perfect adult whale. But every day on Mother's Day, kind of in honor of this day, I remember them and kind of do a little celebration of Cookie and his mom, Oreo.
Wonderful.
that's so cute.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's your turn. So we're going to randomly assign everybody to a breakout room where you will be joined by one of the storytellers who is ready to hear your stories too. And when our time is up, we'll come back together to talk a little bit about the online forum and have a little bit of time for Q&A. As I said before, if you don't have a chance to share your story in the breakout rooms, that's okay. Because we will have this online forum where you can both post your stories and also read other people's stories and make comments on that. So, all right. Welcome back, everybody. Is there anything in particular you'd like to share, your impressions or questions? I see a couple questions in the chat.
I want to share something that Sarah said in our group about she was out following the orcas from the messages and Facebook groups, and how great it was to follow them from place to place by everybody communicating of where to go look, and she compared the messaging of the community messaging each other of where to go to find the whales to the whales communicating to each other over distances. And I just thought that was such a great analogy, and I'd never thought of it that way or heard anyone describe it that way. And I thought that was really cool how our pod communicates across distances with our phones and Facebook and text and on where to go see the whales, where the whales are doing that, on where the salmon are over here. Oh, okay, if you go over, go find us at this big rock where the salmon are hiding. and they all go over, swing over there. And it's like, I thought that was a great analogy. So thanks to Sarah, who was in our group, who came up with that. I like that.
Okay, well, I want to, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the first part. Did you talk about Alpod coming back in?
We didn't talk about the Penn Cove.
Oh,
Penn Cove
yeah.
return.
Yeah, Penn Cove. Yeah, that's worth talking
Good.
Oh yeah, somebody's
Who wants to tell the story about Elpod returning to Penn Cove after 50 years after?
How many of us can do it? There's a whole bunch of
I
us
wasn't there.
Well, I was there for
I was
November
there. 3rd. Rachel, yeah.
You don't have to.
Rachel, you were there for
There's a lot of other people.
Rachel
Yeah. Rachel and yeah.
So sure, I would love to hear Rachel's version. Actually, I've heard mine.
Giles, weren't you on the boat out there? Yeah, that day. Yeah, so you got a front hand view.
Yeah, it was really cool. when they did come in, you know, everyone was cheering, you know, there was some on the south side of the shore, some people on the north shore, and we were all just kind of holding our breath the first day when they crossed that line and came in, you know, and that was really just a really big moment. But when they did come in the next day with it was Racer and Fluke, L72 Racer and L105 Fluke, they split off from the rest of L Pod. And so L Pod, the majority, were hanging out not far from where the captures were, where they loaded the whales up on the dock, and they spent time just kind of going back and forth, and it was really, really interesting behavior. And it's one of those things that, you know, it's like you can't explain like what are they doing, you know? They would go back and forth, little bit, little bit, little bit. And luckily, a couple of our friends had split up and went to Captain Whidbey, and they discovered that L72 and L105 were over there. And those two just stayed right off the dock and just kept circling and circling. And they were split for, how I can't remember, was it over half an hour? It was a while before they all rejoined, and it was really, and they weren't foraging, and I don't know why Racer and Fluke were separate. Don't know what they were doing or what the rest of L Pod was doing, but it was how close they were to such bad things happening, and here they were doing unexplainable things. So it's really just really amazing to see that kind of stuff. So I don't have any interpretation for it, but I do remember looking at a friend and saying, are they trying to tell us something? Like what is going on? So it's another layer of that mystery they add. As we say, they leave us with more questions than answers on their visits. So
yeah, for me, it seemed like living here on Penn Cove, it kind of felt like they were saying, you know, we accept your apology, and kind of broke the bad karma. That's just what it feels like to me, because 50 years or so with them, and you know, like I said in my breakout room, that Ocean Sun is the only one that knew what had happened there, and she led her family back in there. So I feel like they maybe kind of forgave us a little bit.
Um, I
Well,
fully, go ahead.
well, it certainly looked ritualistic. It looked like some kind of ceremony, some kind of, commemoration or expression of grief. By the reports, it was 90 minutes that L72 and L105 were pacing back and forth. And I put that together with the reports from John Stone, who used to take us out every August 8th in Cutty Sark, his little catch, and show us exactly where the captures happened. And also from the photos that showed that they would lasso the calves and wrap them up in nets and strap them on the side of the capture boats, which were fishing boats, seine boats. And they would then park them or tie them up at the dock at the Captain Whidbey and go in, long before cell phones. They went in to call customers and line up sales, negotiate prices, and also call in a flatbed truck to take the captives down to the holding pens in Seattle. So those calves would be strapped up in a net on the side of a boat, and their families were hundreds of yards away, kept away by another net all the way across Penn Cove. But the vocalizations carried. So I can just imagine the torment, the trauma that went on from that exact spot where L72 and L105 spent an hour and a half pacing. I mean, you just can't deny the correlation, I guess, to be scientific about it. But they were in that spot and they were doing that strange behavior. And it sure looked like they had a memory And yet they were not born when that happened. Only L25 was. So it's a memory conveyed to them, told to them somehow.
Yeah,
So
one
yeah,
thing I forgot to mention before Racer and Fluke split off for that circling over there by themselves, the all of El Pod all of a sudden started porpoising along the edge of Penn Cove, and I remember just shrieking in excitement because seeing them all together porpoise like that, you don't always see that a lot, and they went high speed past Captain Whidbey, and then the El Pod came back to more the middle of the cove and where they hung out back and forth when Racer and Fluke split off. So don't know what
right.
that burst of energy was beforehand, but it was really powerful, and then they kind of just split and did whatever that was. So it was really
30,
amazing.
33 whales porpoising. That had to be some sight.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Well, and we talked to two of our Coast Salish elder friends about it too, and they felt like it was either Ocean Sun bringing them in to either like pass on the history of that location, knowing she's an older whale, and before she passed, she wanted to pass that history on, or either come back to you know, either to do some healing of the place so that if it was a food source, to say it's okay to come back here now. I don't know. Or for some reason, she felt the need to bring them back for some, that it was some sort of ceremonial reason or passing on of, their version of oral history. And the Coast Salish see them very much as their ancestors, and their culture is, the Orca culture is very much like the Coast Salish culture. I believe, and I see the similarities. But Giles, what was your experience being out there with them?
That was actually our first day on the water down in South Sound, so we got there a little bit later. We ended up seeing them exiting Penn Cove. It was remarkable. I mean, it was a shocking thing to, we were kind of texting back and forth with Michael from the center, and during this time, like, are they really in there? And it was a very well, from, just from my own perspective, a poignant first day on the water in South Sound, to have them down there. I wish that we had been able to get there a little bit earlier. It was kind of choppy for us to get there. It wasn't ideal conditions, and we didn't know the region that well, but yeah, I mean, it begs the question as to, what's happening. And then, we did see the J16s right near there for the first time with the new baby, in September. So kind of, it's interesting. It's hard for me to, I stumble over my words because I don't know what's happening, but it's a very interesting place. It feels powerful when we're there for me. And so, like how he said, L25 is the only living whale that experienced any of that. And for her to be there when the others come back in, I think is very interesting. And I was glad to be there for that last year.
So I think, just hearing the different perspectives on this one event is testament to why these stories are so important, why we want to keep these stories told and keep passing them on so that people know just how incredible these whales are, and why we need to be working so hard to protect them, even when, the encounters are maybe a little rarer than they used to be, or harder to achieve. So Thank you all so much for being here and for sharing your stories. And I'm putting in the chat, and I'm going to have a slide here in a second as well, for the Circle forum space. So this is an online forum. Some of you may be familiar with Circle for different things. But if you go to this space, you can read the stories that are written there. If you want to add your story, and I hope Tony and Summer, who are in my breakout room, I hope that you'll share your stories there. You need to register, but you can do that with your Gmail account or your Facebook account. You don't have to do a separate account registration for Circle to do that. You'll also notice that in Orca Network Circle Space, we have a blog and news and announcements spaces, and there'll be others coming on. So we're really hoping to make this a place where the community who is so passionate about these animals can form connections and share information. If there are other spaces to tell stories about other populations or other species of whales that you are interested in, let us know so we can create them. And I want to thank once again Dr. Giles and Iba for joining us this evening. Here is once again, so that, yeah, there's our Circle, the QR code for the Circle space as well. And please save the date for January 24th, 2006, when our Ways of Whales workshop will be happening. We'll be live in Coopville on Whidbey Island. But if you are far away and couldn't make it to Whidbey Island, it will be streamed live as well. So more information and registration for that will be available in the near future. So again, thank you so much.